this afternoon, and both thank you, Chris and Rick, for getting back down here to New Orleans. Always a pleasure. Let's just jump right in. You're both people who have planned music festivals before. There's a lot that goes into them, whether you're talking about location or tech. What is the most important thing, and is it really just come down to the bands that are playing when you're going to talk about whether a festival will make or break?
Well, I think it's the whole package. You know, most people are looking for an overall experience when they go to something like that. You can go to any venue and just see a concert or a band, but I think really, you know, festivals in a sense have a personality, and you know, what community they're representing, what creative elements they're expressing, you know, what the sort of connection is between the audience and that brand. I think that's really, at the end of the day, what you know, makes great festivals great.
I mean, yeah, of course. Like, I think music festivals are an interesting time right now. I think there's a lot of like, music's obviously as an industry is shifting in many ways. So festivals are like a tangible example of a way in which you can engage with artists or like your friends and the community of, like, you know, a larger community that you don't know, enjoying a certain type of music or just generally enjoying the love of music. And the challenge right now is as much about excuse me, differentiation and creating something, like Rick was saying, like that involves community and involves a holistic viewpoint just as much as it is the lineup, I think. Because the lineup matters, but like there's a lot of homogeny in lineups nowadays, and because of that, I think as festival operators, and I'm sure Rick would probably agree, like you want to make what you do as unique as you can, and there's only so much you can do because artists now have a livelihood that's at stake because this is how they're making a lot of money from their art. But you know, differentiating that and having a point of view and creating a holistic environment that is supportive of the event it's harder and harder to do, but that's part of like the fun challenge of doing it. So we like to think about it less about, you know, what headliners can we get and more about like what weird shit can we do.
You both mentioned community. And so I'm wondering, particularly in New Orleans on the eve of Jazz Fest Weekend 2, how important is the physical locale and the local community when it comes to planning out these festivals? Because I feel like the events both of you put on, that's a major factor.
Yeah, I think there's sort of different elements for different types of events. So for instance, things that are about the brand of whether it's a media brand like Pitchfork or whether it's like Bonnaroo where we're sort of creating the community unto itself, then I think the location is slightly less important in a specific basis. If you're trying to do something like the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival or what we've done with Outside Lands, what we're doing with our new Lost Lake Festival in Phoenix, it's everything. You know, those festivals are really expressions of what community and what the culture is about of that particular site, and so in that regard, it's paramount. And I think people who do festivals really well that are based on a community really get their hands dirty of going into that community, figuring out all the assets creatively, mining them, making sure the branding is really aligned with the entire sense of what that community is. That's how it's done really well, and clearly, I mean, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival is, you know, the primary textbook example of how to do that at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally true, and in, you know, in Bonnaroo's example, obviously you create your own city and world where you have control over it, but even then location, I'd still argue on behalf of Bonnaroo in the sense that like creating your own world that's the largest city in Tennessee for a weekend, or you know, probably
not the largest, like, but close. Yeah.
I guess there's a few large cities in Tennessee, but you know, for us, it's you know, we're a festival in Chicago and in Paris, and we tried. You know, Chicago's a festival that's very much like devoted to the city and our love for being from Chicago and being Midwesterners, but it's speaking to an international audience. So it's like the balance between supporting our community and then also treating ourselves like a global organization. So when we think about growing, for example, we went to Paris, and it's not like we just wanted to pick up the model that we built in Chicago and just plop it in Paris. It was what, to Rick's point, you know, we learn, we find the right people, we work with the right people, we learn everything. And what we didn't want to be is a bunch of Americans putting our flag down in Paris and saying, hey, look, we're internationally like a festival now. It's more in some ways, we were kind of counter to even using our brand name in weird ways, where it took 3 or 4 years, but suddenly it's being recognized as a festival that matters to Europeans, and I think most of them aren't even reading the website in some ways, just because they value what Pitchfork is doing in the context of the larger European festival market. So it's half the size, it's indoors, it's in the winter, like it's totally different. And if we do more things, to Rick's point, you do something that is unique to that world, and that's again how you differentiate yourself as an event, how you serve the community that you're trying to be a part of, and how you're not just a fraud like trying to purely make money. Money's a part of it, but it comes through care, love, and respect for the community that you're trying to build it within. I think we'd all agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of you are also, well, I want to touch on tech since we're at Collision, and you've been in the live event space now for multiple years. How has tech become an increasing part of it? Are we reaching a point where it's perhaps becoming too much a part of it, or can you see a limit on how we want to use tech because part of the live event is being there and experiencing what you can in the real world?
Well, I think if you take a step back and look at the history of the growth of festivals, I think it's very closely aligned with certain developments in the tech space. You kind of start with the birth of the internet and people being able to communicate across large distances. You have right on top of that digital music, and people just being able to access all sorts of different types of music. And that's the festival format, is listening to lots of different things. Then you go right to the social side of people being able to communicate and create communities that are living on beyond just the festival. And then mobile, which sort of really makes the social currency of being at a festival extremely valuable, right? So I think from that regard, all of the different permutations are going to be affecting the music festival market. And I think wearables is probably the next space. I think as you see that experience that you can have with your digital life become more easy to have in that festival or live experience model, you'll see innovations that go right alongside of that. So I think it's a really good symbiotic thing. I don't think there's a lot of issues there. And then you have some of the technologies that are helping facilitate some of the back end side of the business, the RFID side, access control, unlocking some of the potential of how you interact with sponsors and brands. Those are all really positive things in a general sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think on top of that, like there's a fine line, I think, between the RFID and being able, data is key, right? Like technology loves data, and Facebook and Google love data, and we all exist in a world where our data is being exploited at all times, whether we know it or not. And that's okay if we're complicit, and that's totally fine. And I think it has huge value when it comes to a sponsor and how you treat your audience and how you because the goal is to use that data to make their experience better, not to just abuse it and make money off of them. But I do think that the other side of it, where that's the positive end, is music festivals in general are supposed to be about music because they're called music festivals. And sometimes, and I don't think that anything that Superfly does, nor that I believe we do, they're devoted to a point of view in the music that we're putting on the stages. And I do find that technology specifically, whether it's any number of social platforms, becomes a more important way for kids to, and I say kids generally, up to 70 years old, still kids, but I doubt it that 70-year-olds are using Snapchat maybe, but it becomes a social event that you get to take your pictures at versus watching the music. And I do find myself getting super old quickly and saying why don't we just fucking watch the music and stop recording it or taking pictures, or of myself in front of my friends with a flower headband on and stuff, There's a balance between, that's where technology is kind of infecting what was once a pretty pure environment where there's two dynamics, sponsor and music, and then the people that are existing within. And now it's selfie town, and I don't know how many fucking selfies I can deal with anymore. This is so annoying.
Round of applause. There you go.
Keep clapping and stop taking, please.
I want to transition a little bit. You both have music festival experience, but this year you're each taking on different types of events. Superfly is partnering with Comedy Central. Pitchfork has launched October, which is a beer media company, and you're going to start doing live tasting events. Can you talk about why those decisions came about and what the challenges are in entering these new events into what is a saturated live event market?
Well, from the Superfly side, we're just passionate about events and experiences and bringing people together through that format. And so, we've been doing comedy for many, many years at Bonnaroo. It's probably one of the biggest comedy events in the country, a little under the radar in that regard. And we just have seen the growth in that particular market. We created an amazing partnership with Comedy Central to really bring to life a lot of the intellectual property that exists on the Comedy Central universe. Working with some others outside of that universe as well to really bring the comedy world and community together and create an event that's really dynamic in that space. It really hasn't been done before. There are some cool comedy events out there, but nothing that's really large format, and it's really speaking to sort of the modern festival audience. And we're going to be doing that on lots of other passions. Music is a core of what we do and who we are, but it's not the only thing that we love. And so really our business is all about just finding those things that we love and figuring out how we can create amazing events and bring people together around them.
Yeah, I think that people, you go see a show and it's when you determine whether or not the band's probably actually good versus just putting out good records. And there's the tangible-ish nature of an event or a concert or anything it's profoundly, visceral, right? So to create different environments, no one wants to stop eating pizza and no one wants to stop going and enjoying themselves. So they don't want to go and do the same shit over and over again, which is the challenge for everybody doing this. But at the same time, the impact that you can have by putting on an event, that whether it's big or small in some cases, to see the enjoyment that derived from that is a different thing from, whether it's utilizing the digital world or it's just, you like having dinner parties. It's all the social aspect of that can't be underscored, and being the facilitator for that is an amazing feeling because no one ever cares about you as an individual or an organization. They care about the fact that they want to have a good time. And if you can enable that good time, I think we've all been perfectly comfortable living in the shadows saying, let's enable the good time and make sure people are safe and have some fun, Because, I don't know, man. If you don't do that, then you're literally on the internet all day long and you're miserable.
You touched on something I wanted to ask about. Pitchfork was an established brand before it got into the live event space. Comedy Central was an established brand before this festival was ever even an idea. Does it change the equation when that is the case, when it is a known entity starting a live event as opposed to a live event that just kind of organically grew from an event planner or from a town?
Well, I think that in the increasingly crowded media world, there is a need for media brands to connect directly with audiences and for have their brand live in a physical manner. And so a lot of the work that we do as a company at Superfly is helping brands figure out exactly how to do that. And we love doing that work, particularly with brands that we respect and we think are culturally relevant and interesting. It's an interesting time right now, particularly in the media and live space, because you're seeing a lot of cool marriages between brands that have IP, that have audiences out there, and they need that vehicle to connect, live and in person with people. And so it's fun work to do. We've had so much fun working with the Comedy Central team and figuring out, okay, how do we take this property or this talent and plug it into a live experience? We're doing a whole activation with Seinfeld, the whole activation with Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a really cool thing with South Park. To Chris's point, what do you want to get up and do in the morning? Well, that's pretty fun stuff to be doing. There's more of that we really feel really out there for media brands to be thinking about of how they can, take those things and connect directly with audiences and express them in a, experiential way. That's what we love doing.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, for Pitchfork starting a festival was to create our festivals are our print magazine, That's a very loose analogy, but pretty much how we've operated. But in a broader notion is like, what Superfly is doing and what we're trying to do, be it with our festival or otherwise, is like, agencies, brands, these people don't traditionally, even if they go to and or understand them, they're not working on them. So I think we're seeing a sea change of, whether it's a brand with a digital agency and an event, there's a lot of moving parts, and they're starting to think like, well, wait a minute, like, we're a brand that manages X, we're an agency that manages X brand, and we want to do events, but we have no idea what we're doing. So they're going to people that know exactly what they're doing to then do them for them, and that A, makes the event better, and B, makes it more legitimate, and it's not just a brand doing something shitty because the brand organized it. And no shade on brands, but like when the brands organize it, it's normally super shitty. So you're supposed to. If I need to do if I need something outside of my realm of expertise, then I ask the expert, versus think I can do it myself because I'm not delusional. So, like I find that is where there's it's not a massive change yet, but I think that where Superfly is moving and we're working, his team are going, like it's the same way we're working. Just like, look, we can help you with this, whether we're even involved or not, but don't discount that, because we're not discounting the brand that you are. And I think the opportunity there is endless, because the beauty of musicians making money and being facilitated through brands nowadays, and the fact that the economy of being a musician and an artist is changing, what we can do is help enable the growth of the art form through that, with also being able to protect the integrity of the art form versus commodifying it. And again, like sometimes it gets forgotten in the context of a strategy plan from a brand or an agency. So I'm hoping that we can all, like, Superfly, Pitchfork, Golden Voice, whomever is doing it, is figuring out how to like make these things not shitty.
Totally. Look, live experience is hard. It's easy for it to be cheesy. It's easy for it to be lowbrow. It's easy for it to not run well. And so it really is a place where expertise is of high value. And that is, part of our thesis as Superfly, is that we're able to engage with all of these different people in this ecosystem of brands, of artists, of fans, and like create experiences that are of great value to everybody, or aren't crap. We've passed up so much crap in our career as a company, and it's like every time we do that, we know that like we're on the right path, essentially. And we look at the things that we do each day, and it's like under that microscope for sure.
You're better at not saying bad words, by the way. I'd say too many bad words, but it's true. Like you pass up crap to make sure it's the right thing, and it's an incredibly valuable thesis, because, like you said, like it just being an expert and having a point of view, and recognizing like the lens with which you can work is something that it's a lesson that we all learn daily, I think, and you want to do more of, right? Because
if you are a non-expert getting into the space, you get New Yorker profiles written about you, quickly after that, as we've all seen recently.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, Rick, I really appreciate you guys coming down to New Orleans and sharing some insight with the crowd today. Thank you guys for having us. Enjoy Jazz Fest if you're going. Hope to see you out there.
Thanks. Yep. All right. Right on. Thanks.